Welcome to this new how-to. In this how-to we're gonna use Navigraph to plan our flights. So currently you're seeing the world map, right? The world map in Flight Simulator 2020, which allows you to schedule flights. So for example, I can go to this list and say, okay, I want to depart from Davis, Montana, which is in the US. And I want to arrive, well, let me do Amsterdam Airport. And then based on this drop-down list, I can either select voor-to-voor or I can use the IFR because voor-to-voor and direct GPS is seen as visual flights, and low altitude airways and high altitude airways are seen as instrumental flights. So we're going to select high altitude, and then it will show me the flight. It already has scheduled everything, so it includes, say, both waypoints, intersections, etc. And then I can, I would say, save the flight, for example, right? So let me do that. So I'm going to save the flight, US to NL, and then make sure that you're selecting the option to say, I want to save the flight plan, if you're hitting the save option. So now switch to Navigraph. Because Navigraph is part of the Navigraph subscription, which you can buy from Navigraph, right? It's, I would say, is it expensive? Well, it depends, but you get a lot for it, right? You've got multiple subscriptions. You've got, I would say, the cheaper version, and you've got the, I would say, more expensive version. The more expensive version, of course, has more options like charts and some other stuff which is included. So Navigraph Charts is the tool from Navigraph which allows you to also schedule flights. And for that we need to go to the flight section, and that will bring up this window. Currently you can see that there are no flights here, so we can start scheduling flight. So if we hit the new option, we've got three options. We've got the manual input, the from file, and the from Simbrief, because Navigraph bought Simbrief, right? So it's a logical, I would say, integration. So let me start with the first one. The first one allows you to schedule flights based on the same way as the world map, which I just showed you, right? So I can type in Amsterdam Airport, and you can either specify the ICAO code or you can search for the city, and then make sure that you're selecting the airport. And for example, if I want to fly to New York, I can also specify it here, like New York, Kennedy International, and then of course I can specify an alternate airport. In this case, I want to have an alternate airport, Ronald Reagan. And then you have two options. One of them is simply press the create option. The create option, as you can see, simply creates a flight which goes from Amsterdam to John F. Kennedy. It only has a DCT, so it is a direct flight to John F. Kennedy. But I'm missing all the waypoints here, right? So let's clear the flight and let's reschedule it. And to do that, there are two options. You can either use the type route, and the type route allows you to specify the intersections and airways manually by typing them in manually. But of course, that's, I would say, a lot of work. So we're trying to avoid that, of course. The next option which you have, if you forget to select the option, is, say, auto route. If you select auto route, you have the option to select either the high airways or the low airways. The difference is the altitude on which the flights are being performed, right? So I would say, in case of Boeing 787 or Airbus, you probably select high airways. And then you press calculate. Once you've done that, you will see that a lot of things have changed. You can see that intersections have been added, some airways have been added, and it contains the full flight, right? So it should schedule the flight completely for you, which is really nice. Then the other nice thing is that if you're departing from an airport, you probably want to use one of the departures. So what we can do is we can say show visual overview. In this case, we've selected runway 04 as the departing runway. And then we can see, hey, okay, in this case, if we're departing from runway number 4, then we've got these, I would say, standard instrumental departures. So let's assume that I would say we're flying to the US. So in that case, maybe the full A2F is maybe the most, I would say, realistic one which you can choose, right? Because it's, I would say, kind of on our path to the, I would say, to the US. So if you select that one, you can find some more information here also, right? You can see, okay, hey, link to chart. You can see that it's part of the AirNav departure. And you can say add to route. In that case, it will simply add it to the route here. To remove it, you simply click it and then delete it. And that's both for the runway and the, I would say, standard instrumental departure, right? Because it has added two things now here. It has both added the runway and it has added the departure. If you only want to remove the runway, you can delete it. The nice thing here is that it also has an overlay, so you can see, okay, hey, what's the route being followed, right? If I select IGRID, it directly goes to here. And if I select the next one, M40, Nograd, it simply jumps from one point to the other one. So it allows you to do a lot of things. So let me zoom out again. The same thing can be done for the destination. So in this case, the destination is shown like this. So we've got John F. Kennedy. Oh, where is it? Which is here. And you can see a green line here, which means that it's already, I would say, kind of a special route. Because you can see that the normal line, so the normal flight, is completely red. And only this one is shown as green. Because this is part of the approaches. And here we can do the same thing again. So in this case, it's selected runway 04 Lima as the, I would say, arriving runway. And then based on that, we can have a look at it. So we can say, hey, show the arrivals. And there you will see that there are multiple arrivals possible. So in this case, it will select it, or it has selected, or it has not selected actually. We could select this departure route in I would say straight into runway 04, because currently it's not added. And we can do the same thing as with let's say the previous, or the departing airport I should say, and simply add it to our flight plan, right? That's one option, or we can use one of the other items which we selected here. So we've got arrivals, which you can select here, and we've got approaches, which you can see here. And if you press the approaches option itself, it will show you the approaches available. If you click on the show visual, right, let me do it again, it shows you, in this case I should press arrivals, it should show you all the arrivals which are possible for this airport. So let's assume that we're wanting to select an approach and we want to use ILS. In that case, we're selecting this option. This option I said, and then press the visual, and then we can see it, and then it should show it to us. And then we can select arrival, and the arrival, yeah, that depends, because it depends on which arrival you want to select. So let's assume that we want to select Part 3. Kind of select it, then you can see that it directly modifies the flight plan, and now we've got a flight plan from Amsterdam to the US, including the intersections, airways, but also the SIDs, so the standard instrumental departures, and the stars, the standard terminal approach routes, in which make sure that we can land on, I would say, Kennedy Airport. Now the next question probably is, okay, how can we get this data in Flight Simulator? And that is currently, I would say, a bit of a challenge, because you can't do it directly from Navigraph. But what you can do is you can export the flight. So you can say export it, and then you have multiple options. One of the options is to export it to a Flight Simulator 2020 flight plan, which you can of course load inside the let's say world map. So let me do that. So we're going to export it. You have to specify runway or approach for the selected. Didn't I select that one? I thought I selected it. Oh, let's select it like this. Let's try it again. So you can also see that it, I would say, warns you if you didn't select anything. So you can specify the cruise altitude, and then we hit export, and then we need to save the file. In this case, I'm going to save it on my desktop. That's the easiest way. And by default, it has the name of the departing airport and the destination one. So let's move to Flight Simulator again, and then we're going to go to back, and we're going to say reset, because we want to reset it. And then we press the space more option. We don't need the legends, and click the load option. By default, all the flights, plans and flights for Flight Simulator are stored in the packages Microsoft Flight Simulator, then the GUID, and then the local state folder. In this case, we saved the plan created with Navigraph on our desktop. So we're gonna select it, and then we're gonna wait. And you can see now it has defined the flight with all the things which we defined, including the departures and arrivals, right? We didn't select the approach because we didn't select an approach for now. So it's selecting the automatic approach. That's one option. So going back to Navigraph, I will show you the other option. The other option is to export it, and then we can export it to the clipboard. Because if we export it to the clipboard, we can use Simbrief. So we can say, okay, hey, we want to go to the dispatch system, and we want to create a new flight. Then we can specify the flight, right? So we can say, okay, hey, we're flying from Echo Hotel of Mike to JFK. You can specify an alternate, although it automatically does, determine the, I would say, the alternate. Then we can select the flight type or the aircraft, 787. Then we will leave this as default for now, and then you see it already defined the flight. But the nice thing is that you can remove this completely and then say I want to use this, and then say analyze a route. In this case, it found an issue because it didn't find the fix VOLAF 2F in our flight plan. So that's something you need to fix, and how to fix it is by removing it from this, and now you can see it's correct. So it didn't accept the standard instrumental departure. So you can analyze it again. It says, hey, the route is valid, this is the distance, and then you can see the flight here. And if we would scroll down, we can see the map, and we can enable the airways, etc. Right? All the options which we can enable can be enabled. By default, it only shows the route. So if you're happy with it, then you can save the flight, and then you can generate the flight. And once you generated the flight, it's available in Flight Simulator 2020, depending on which aircraft you're using, of course. It's available currently in the Boeing 787. If you're using the B78 add-on, which updates the cockpit, and you've got the A32NX, that's, I would say, probably the most most used one by fly-by-wire, and that also has the option to import it directly into Flight Simulator itself. So we discussed two options to create flight plans. One of them is by using a plan created in Flight Simulator and then importing it into Navigraph Chart. The other option we discussed is creating it completely using Navigraph. But there's also a third option. So let me do the following. We're going to unload the flight. We're going to zoom out. And then we're going to use the third option, because there's a third option, and that's, of course, from Simbrief. What you can see here is it shows you the latest Simbrief OFP, right? So I didn't generate the OFP yet for this last one. So I can say generate flight, and then say generate it. Of course, we'll now show exactly the same flight as we already planned, right? So keep that in mind. So it's here. Then we can go back to Navi chart and hit flights and then say new flight from Simbrief, and now it shows us exactly the same flight as we already programmed and then exported to Simbrief. So based on this is really nice stuff, right? But let me show you some other stuff. So when we're going into Flight Simulator itself, we're gonna use this flight plan which we loaded from or loaded using the flight plan option. Again, you can also do it from Simbrief. Maybe I should show that because that's, I would say, much more fun. So we're gonna reset the flight, and then we're only gonna define the departing airport, so Schiphol, and then we're gonna zoom in a bit. But because we don't want to start on runway in this case, we want to start at one of the gates. Let's select gate A, no, C. Yeah, let's select C in this case. You can, pretty cool, right? You can see aircrafts. So we're gonna click fly, and then we need to wait for it to load. Again, I'm using the Boeing 787, and the 787 has a special add-on. So let me show that in this window. If you search for B78 X-ray Hotel on the internet, you will find the Heavy Division add-on, and the Heavy Division one contains a lot of nice things. Keep in mind it's not updated regularly compared to the A32NX. Latest stable version is from the 6th of September, but it's working pretty well. There are several options or issues still in this one, so you can open issues using the new issue button here to make the developers aware. So let's go to Flight Simulator. You can see it's a little bit gray here at Schiphol Airport. So what we're gonna do as first thing is make sure that the ATC is switched off, because that's sometimes a little bit irritating. So I'm gonna start the engines. So we're gonna say, okay, we want to use external power. Switch the battery on. Generators on. Make sure that the IRSs are turned on, right? Else we don't have navigation. These are already switched on. Sometimes it's a little bit, let's say, nasty to figure out what's switched on and what's not switched on. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to the central display, and then we can initialize our position. That's good. And then we can go to the heavy option, and the heavy option has the configuration part where you can specify the username and password for Simbrief. Then you can specify, okay, hey, route only with SID, with star. You can specify the options here. You can say, okay, hey, I want to have both the star and the SID, or I only want to import the route. So that's cool. So once we've done that, you can go to the route and then select request. And if you select request, you've got two options. You've got from Simbrief or from SB and from PFPX. In case of Simbrief, you need to press the from load from SB option. And then we need to go back. Hopefully it works. It worked in the past. Doesn't work now anymore. You can always see that if you are trying to show it nicely and make people enthusiastic about it, it doesn't work anymore. If that's the case, then I'm gonna show it with aligning. Let me double check. I'm gonna set these one to no. Although I don't think that makes a difference. It's not in database. So let me also specify the flight itself. There are sometimes some weird things with this add-on, I must say. Sometimes it works perfectly and sometimes you hit some issues with it. And it looks like currently we're hitting some issues with it because it doesn't like us anymore. So let me go back to the main menu, right? So let me show it with another aircraft. Let me show it in this case with the A32. And then we need to use the A32NX. We can change the livery, right? So we're going to change to the KLM livery. We're going to define the departure gate as here. We're going to press fly again and then give it a second try. So you can see that sometimes the add-ons are not working perfectly. One of the workarounds for that is, of course, to load it directly from the, let's say, world map. That would also be an option if you're not having one of those aircrafts with Simbrief integration. Because as long as you, I would say, load the flight plan, that should be perfectly fine. So let's give it some minutes. And then we can, let's say, enjoy the nice stuff and load it from the A32NX1, because that one works. Takes a little bit longer as expected, right? But we've got all the time in the world. Takes a little bit longer as I hoped. So let's close this windows and let's see. Yeah, the flight is already set there, so that's okay. It always takes longer as you hope it will take, right? And you can see currently that I would say the Simbrief shows nicely the flight plan, so that's good. It also contains the OFP, right? So you can read it, can read through it. It contains also the view options, etc. But the nice thing about that A32NX1 is that it has all those options integrated, so it allows you to, I would say, actually pick up the values from the flight plan and import it directly into Flight Simulator itself. But for now it takes a little bit longer as I hoped. So what I will do is I will pause recording and will resume the recording once this has been resolved. Or once the flight is loaded, I should say. So when we're back, it finally loaded. It took a little bit longer as I hoped. So let's start, let's say, switching on the engines. Or switching on the aircraft, I should say. I'm not going to switch on the engines yet. And then get crew supply. And then we need to wait. Need to switch on the IRSs. And so the A32NX has a nice add-on, right? It has a flight pad. The flight pad also has the option to import a flight, so you can either select it here, or you can use it for, or you can do it by going to the MCDU. I will select it from here, and then it should normally pop up with the flight, right? So you can see the flight number, which is pulled from the Navigraph, Simbrief flight plan. You can see departing airport, destination, and you can find the chart options. This one is also part of the Navigraph subscription, so don't be very surprised if you don't have it. For example, this allows me to search for an airport and then find the stars, SIDs, so the departure instructions, which are now nicely loaded. I can browse to them, and they also contain the different departures which are available, the taxi instructions, but also the maps for the aircraft. You can see there's, I would say, a lot of things here, right? Airport information, the parking stands. So you're searching for the parking stand. You can do it easily using this, I would say, built-in interface, and you can make it either full screen or a small screen, whatever you like. So that's, I would say, nice, right? The other thing which Navigraph offers you is the Navigraph Charts. And that one requires a code, so you don't see it yet because I did hide it for security purposes. But what I can do with this is when I enter the code, I need to enter it. The only between brackets bad thing is that you need to enter it each time you start Flight Simulator, while the other one, which is integrated in the A32NX, that one is, I would say, fully integrated into and fully saved in the A32NX, so you don't need to specify it. So what you now see is that we've got the chart, the Navigraph charts, loaded here directly. So I can simply either select it from here, right, if I didn't select it, but else it will figure out, hey, this is the active flight. So that's cool. So now you can, I would say, start and take off. And the nice thing that it also has enabling moving maps, which means that it will keep track of where you are. So you can see, okay, hey, this is where I currently are in my flight plan. Of course, you can also unload the flight plan using the unload option. Then it will, I would say, remove it, as you can see, and it will show you the direct or the position of your aircraft. So all kind of nice things which you can do with the Navigraph. I would say if you're a Flight Simulator fan, it's probably something you want to at least give it a try, because it really adds some nice things. Of course, I'm not here to I would say, promote Navigraph, but I like it. It gives me a lot of I'd say, flexibility and a lot of nice things which I'm really using on a regular basis. So here in this how-to, we looked at how you can use Navigraph to plan your flights using 3 options, and we looked at how you can get that flight plan in Flight Simulator itself. So I hope you liked this video. If you liked it, then consider to use the like button. If you've got questions or comments, then feel free to post them in the comment box below the video. And if you want to stay up to date about new videos I'm posting, then consider subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching and see you next time.